In this episode, I'm going to tell you a true love story. Hopefully, you will enjoy it as much as I do. In the heart of Tirana in the 1970s, Albania was tightly sealed off from the outside world. The ruling regime had turned the country into one of the most isolated places on earth, with strict rules forbidding communication with foreigners. Every citizen was expected to show loyalty to the government, and any act of curiosity about the world beyond Albanian borders was viewed with deep suspicion. In this controlled environment, Drita, a young woman in her early 20s, had learned to keep her thoughts to herself. She worked quietly in a small bookstore in Tirana, stocking the limited, government-approved titles that aligned with the regime's values. In the sanctuary of this bookstore, Drita nurtured a secret love for literature and a profound longing to see what lay beyond Albania's closed borders. The outside world, for her, was nothing more than a dream tucked between the pages of the books she sold. One spring day, an unfamiliar face entered the bookstore. Mehmet, a Turkish journalist, had come to Tirana on a rare assignment. Albania allowed almost no foreign visitors, but Mehmet had received special clearance to cover a state event promoting friendship between Albania and Turkey. Yet, he was not here to simply write about diplomatic gestures. Mehmet's true intent was to uncover a glimpse of life inside this enigmatic country, to witness firsthand the reality of a society hidden from the world. Tall, with an air of curiosity softened by a cautious reserve, Mehmet wandered into the bookstore hoping to find a local voice, a glimpse into daily life in this secretive land. Drita, arranging a shelf behind the counter, immediately noticed his slight accent and unplaceable look. For her, he was like a character from one of her books, someone from a world she had only imagined. Mehmet struck up a conversation with Drita, asking if she could recommend a book, an unusual question given the limited selection in her store. She was taken aback, not by the question itself, but by the stranger's gentle curiosity and warmth. She could sense he was different, that he didn't belong to the rigid structure of her everyday life in Albania. She felt the pull of something foreign, something she had never encountered. As they spoke, Mehmet couldn't help but notice Drita's intelligence and her quiet strength. Their conversation was polite, brief, but they both sensed an unspoken connection, a feeling of being seen in a way that went beyond words. Over the next few days, Mehmet returned to the bookstore under the guise of browsing, though they both knew he had come back to see her. He would ask her about books, but his questions subtly steered toward her life and thoughts. And Drita, against her better judgment, found herself opening up, allowing herself to dream of a life beyond the bookstore, beyond Tirana's narrow streets. The attraction between them was undeniable, and their encounters began to carry the weight of a forbidden intimacy, a closeness that could put them both at risk. Despite the danger, they began meeting outside the store, in quiet corners of Tirana where the shadows offered cover from watchful eyes. One evening, Mehmet suggested they meet after the bookstore closed. He knew his time in Tirana was limited, that his assignment would end soon. He wanted to speak to her more freely, without the watchful eyes and the constant fear of being overheard. Drita was hesitant. She knew that even the smallest misstep could have severe consequences, especially with a foreigner. Yet, something in her longed to know more of him, to see what lay behind the mystery he carried. She agreed, and later that night, she slipped away from her family's modest home and met Mehmet at a secluded street corner. In the dim glow of the streetlights, they walked, speaking in whispers, their voices swallowed by the quiet night. Their midnight walks became a regular ritual, each one tinged with the excitement of secrecy and the warmth of shared moments in an otherwise cold environment. They would meet in back alleys, by abandoned buildings, or under old trees in Tirana's parks, places where the darkness offered a sense of safety from prying eyes. Mehmet listened as Drita spoke of her life under Albania's regime, of her dreams to see the world, and her love of books that had become her only window to a wider reality. In return, Mehmet shared stories of Istanbul, of lively street markets, and the sounds of the Bosphorus at dawn. He painted vivid pictures of his life in a world Drita could only imagine, and she hung on to every word, feeling her heart open up in ways she had never known. As their bond deepened, Mehmet found himself torn. His time in Tirana was drawing to a close, and the authorities were beginning to take notice of his lingering presence. It was a rare privilege for any foreigner to be in Albania, and his reasons for extending his stay were starting to draw suspicion. Drita, too, was feeling the weight of the risks they were taking. She had been questioned before about her interactions with foreign visitors, and she knew it was only a matter of time before someone noticed her absence from home or saw her in Mehmet's company. But neither could bring themselves to end their meetings. Their love had blossomed in a space where fear and hope coexisted, and each stolen moment only strengthened the connection between them. One evening, Mehmet received a warning from a colleague who had contacts within the Albanian government. He was being watched, and he would need to leave Albania within days if he wanted to avoid serious trouble. Knowing his departure was imminent, Mehmet arranged a final meeting with Drita. They met in a small, abandoned building they had found during one of their walks, a place that had become a haven for their secret moments together. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words as they stood close, neither willing to let go. In the quiet of the room, Mehmet handed Drita a small, worn notebook filled with his thoughts, memories, and words he had written for her over the last few weeks. He wanted her to have something of him, something she could hold on to when he was gone. Drita, fighting back tears, gave him a pendant she had hidden since childhood, a token from her late grandmother. She had treasured it as a reminder of family and tradition, but in that moment, it felt right to pass it on to Mehmet, someone who had opened a new world to her in a way she had never thought possible. Their last embrace lingered, each second filled with the sorrow of farewell and the bittersweet joy of having known love, even if only briefly. They shared a final kiss, a moment that felt suspended in time as if the city of Tirana itself had paused to honor their parting. Then, without another word, Mehmet disappeared into the night, leaving Drita standing alone, her heart heavy with a mixture of longing and resignation. In the days that followed, Drita was summoned by the authorities. She endured hours of questioning about her interactions with Mehmet. With calm resolve, she denied any personal connection, insisting that their encounters had been casual and professional. The interrogators pushed her, but she remained firm, knowing that any slip-up could result in severe consequences. Eventually, with no evidence to prove otherwise, she was released. But the memories of her brief love affair lingered, her heart bearing the scars of a love lost to a world of secrecy and separation. Years passed, and Albania remained closed to the world, but Drita held onto the notebook Mehmet had given her, reading his words in secret, allowing herself to feel connected to him even as time and distance stretched between them. She often walked the same streets where they had once strolled, imagining his presence beside her, reliving their whispered conversations and the joy of having shared a love that defied boundaries. Then, in the early 1990s, as Albania opened its doors to the outside world, Drita finally received a letter from Turkey, a letter that had waited nearly 2 decades to reach her. Mehmet had never stopped searching for her, never forgotten the love they had shared. One day, Mehmet returned to Tirana, a city transformed yet still holding echoes of their past. Now older, they met again, two souls who had held on to a memory for years, united once more in a city that had changed as much as they had. Together, they walked through the streets, their steps echoing the moments they had cherished. Though time had aged them both, their love had endured, a quiet testament to the resilience of the heart.